welcome to Media Spectrum, where stories still matter. Today we are going to be reviewing Send Help, the newest movie from Sam Raimi. This is just a really fun movie that I definitely recommend seeing in a theater if you have the chance. I know this is a movie that Sam Raimi actually had to fight for to get released in the theaters at all. The studios wanted to do it just to streaming. And there's definitely something to be gained from seeing this in a theater with a large crowd with people reacting. And this is a movie that is really best left as unspoiled as possible. I knew going into this the basic premise that a secretary type finds herself stranded on an island with her horrible boss. I knew it starred Rachel McAdams and that it was directed by Sam Raimi, and that's about all I knew. And that's about all I would recommend trying to know going into this. So with that said, I'm going to try to keep this review mostly free of hard spoilers, maybe one or two at the very end. But I guess what we'll call soft spoilers throughout this one as I just kind of describe the basic characters, basic elements of this movie I liked. So I would recommend seeing the movie before you even watch this review, but it's not going to be that spoilerific if you want to watch this review first. But yeah, that said, I fully recommend seeing it. If something like Misery meets Castaway is kind of a dark horror comedy sounds fun to you, you will almost certainly enjoy this. So I guess first off, I should know this is actually my first Sam Raimi horror film. I was the perfect age for the Spider-Man movies growing up when they came out in theaters, his original Spider-Man trilogy with Tobey Maguire. I have a lot of love for that trilogy. But that's all the Sam Raimi I've ever seen, actually. I've never seen The Evil Dead. I've never seen Drag Me to Hell. I can't think of other ones off the top of my head, but I know he's done more than that. But yeah, as a kid, I was actually really, really sensitive to gore. And so I was not a big horror fan as a kid. And the Evil Dead movies in particular, I always heard were kind of more horror comedy, at least after the first one, but were really extreme, and so I avoided those. That said, I'm older now, I can handle gore a bit better now, and those movies are old enough that I think the effects have probably aged enough I could probably watch them. So maybe Halloween time, I'll go back and finally watch the original Evil Dead trilogy, because I know that's a big kind of blank spot in my film knowledge that I probably should watch at some point. So with that said, having only seen Raimi through the Spider-Man trilogy, I could still kind of see traces of that style here. Especially if you think about some of the campier moments in the Spider-Man movies, like it's the Bruce Campbell cameos, the dancing scenes in a couple of the movies, things like that. I can definitely see some of those same sensibilities carrying over into this. Kind of like the Spider-Man movies, this does a good job of being a real crowd-pleasing movie while still working in different little genre elements for sure. So talking about this movie more critically, one of the first things to talk about is the acting, because this is essentially a two-person show. Yeah, we do have some more characters in the beginning. 90% of the movie is just these two characters. And so how we feel about how these characters are written and performed is going to be hugely influential in how we feel about the movie as a whole. Thankfully, both actors knock it out of the park. First, we have Dylan O'Brien as Bradley, who is the son of the previous owner who was just taking over this new company, and immediately sells himself as this entitled rich kid frat boy douchebag.
As an executive, I see no value in you. Does that make sense?
And man, this guy does such a good job of playing someone who's just so punchable. Like, maybe I'm crazy, but I think he even kind of looks like Martin Shkreli. Remember him? Pharma Bro, the guy that tried to raise the prices on insulin? Yeah, I think he looks kind of like him. Just has one of those faces where it's just, you know, you're just morally compelled, but you can't in a civilized society. Now, Dylan O'Brien, I feel like I've heard the name before. I feel like I've seen him before in something. Couldn't really tell you what. But I'll definitely remember him from this performance. He does very well as Bradley. He's very believable as this type. And then we have Rachel McAdams as Linda, who gives possibly the best performance of her career in this movie. She does such a good job of playing this very intelligent and hardworking, but also very socially inept, kind of graceless, awkward, off-putting type of person that nobody wants to deal with. You know, if you've ever been in a classroom or office environment, you've almost certainly dealt with someone kind of like this. Someone who's very, very good at their job. They're not a bad person, but they're just so uncomfortable. You don't want to deal with them. The thing is, as good of a performance as Rachel McAdams gives as this character, I kind of do wonder if she's been a little miscast. Because think about it, this is, like I said, someone who's supposed to be gross. It's not just the boss that doesn't like her. Like, nobody likes her. Nobody wants to deal with her for more than a few minutes. And I mean, have you seen this woman? Like, you're telling me this woman, this woman, this woman is some unlovable shrew that nobody wants anything to deal with? I beg your pardon? I'm just saying, think about it this way. How many Hollywood movies do you ever see where the lead character is a middle-aged, homely woman, and you cast the queen bee herself, Regina George?
You're like really pretty.
Thank you.
So you agree?
What?
You think you're really pretty?
That is pretty wild. That's like, I don't know. Like, imagine you're casting the new James Bond and you go with Danny DeVito. He's a great actor. I love him as an actor, but is he the best fit for this particular character? You know, that's kind of how I feel about Rachel McAdams in this movie. Like, this could have launched someone's career or really revitalized a career. Like, you think about what Misery did for Kathy Bates. This could have done for some other actress who was very talented, but maybe not quite as conventionally attractive as Rachel McAdams is. To put it another way, like, her character is supposed to have kind of a glow up once they get to the island, because this is important to note. She's a huge Survivor fan. She knows how to set fire in like 3 different ways. Like, she is the perfect person to be stranded on an island with. And as they spend more time there, she kind of has a bit of a glow up. She becomes a little more attractive. She lets her hair down. She gets more relaxed. And like, you can tell the difference, but it's like a 10% increase. Whereas again, with someone who was not like one of the top beauties of her generation, would probably be a much more noticeable shift and actually fit that character arc a little bit better, you know? So, I'm not trying to demean her as an actress, not trying to say she does anything wrong. She is amazing in the performance she gives. I do question if there wasn't somewhere out there an actress that would have been a little more fitting and believable as this character inherently. But with that said, I mean, this movie does such a great job of balancing horror and dark comedy and adventure, being kind of hard to categorize. I felt that they advertised it as much more of a horror thriller movie, and those elements are definitely there. But it's a fun movie. I really view it more as a dark comedy. I think that's the best way to view it going into it. One of the things that I guess should be brought up is the CGI use in this film. It is one of the few contentious points I've seen some people get really kind of upset about or criticize the movie about, particularly when it comes to the gore moments. This movie does use a lot of CGI. So just bear that in mind going in. If you're a real practical effects purist, some parts of this movie might kind of piss you off. For me personally, as someone who's a little more sensitive, I actually kind of appreciate the CGI gore because it's easier to tell that it's not real, and so it's easier to just stomach and go along with the ride. There's a couple scenes in here, the boar scene in particular, which, that would have been a little hard to have watched, I think, if it was not CGI, for me personally at least. And one of the really interesting things about this movie is just kind of consistently how far it goes. Like, the boar scene is a perfect example of something where you could see the same essential sequence playing out in other movies like this, but how far it goes, that's where it becomes like what I imagine a Sam Raimi movie really is. The plane crash sequence where they crash into the ocean and then onto the island in the first place. There are a couple other sequences, a big fight near the end, which would have maybe been a scuffle in other movies, but in this one gets nasty. And in particular, the knife scene.
I am a much nicer boss than you ever would have been. Except for maybe this part.
Not going to spoil it, but the knife scene that the trailers allude to in this movie is so damn effective. It is incredible what this movie does with just a couple close-ups on actors' faces and sound design and pure implication. It's just, I was squirming in the movie theater when I saw it, but it is so well done. That's probably my personal standout scene of the movie. One of the few critiques is that after that, it does seem to lose a little bit of steam. When they get to the last third, it kind of feels like, okay, we've used up most of our creative ideas. Here's the ending. Let's kind of wrap this up and finish it up now. But the actual ending they reach, it's a little jarring. It's a little quick, sudden, out of nowhere. And I do kind of question the choices that one character ends up making in the very end. I wonder if this character would have truly made a choice without going into it. But it does put a nice bow on things. It is very thematically fitting. And in a weird way, this movie actually ends on a very kind of uplifting, positive, I dare say almost wholesome message. It's just the way they get there is interesting for sure. Okay, so that's basically my thoughts on this movie. But before I let you go, I just wanted to let you know a quick channel update going forward. So I'm still going to be doing these movie reviews on every Tuesday. When I have the chance to go see something new in the theater, I will review that. On the weeks where I don't, there is plenty to go back and watch on different streaming services. I have a big catalog of movies I want to get through. So there will always be something on Tuesdays. But going forward, I'm also going to do a new series on Fridays. So starting next week from when you see this, I'm going to start doing a series on Fridays where I review a film trilogy. So one week I'll do one movie, next week I'll do the next movie, third week I'll do the third movie, and then fourth week I'll do kind of a trilogy review recap on my thoughts on it in general. And the first trilogy I'm going to start with is Guardians of the Galaxy. And that will be a really interesting one because most trilogies I've seen all of or I've seen like none of. And this is one where I've seen the first movie a lot. It's like one of my top 10 superhero films, top 5 superhero films. The second one I saw, I think I've maybe seen it twice. I remember basic elements of it, but not all of it. And then the third movie I just never saw because I was just really burned out on superhero movies by the time that came out. So this will be a real interesting mix of a trilogy that I am familiar with at the beginning, but less familiar with as it goes on. So if you're interested in going on that journey with me, like and subscribe, and we'll be starting on it soon. Until then, I'll see you guys next time. Stay sane, stay human.